The room went completely silent. Not quiet the way a restaurant gets quiet between songs. Silent the way a room gets when something true has been said out loud for the first time. My uncle had just mentioned a number, $3.8 million, and every single person at that table turned to look at me. My mother's face did something I had never seen it do before. She looked lost. I picked up my glass and took a slow sip of water. I let the silence stay exactly where it was. Here is what this story is really about. It is not about money. It is about being in the room and still being invisible. It is about trying to share something that mattered to you and watching the person hang up the phone before you finished the sentence. If you have ever worked hard at something real and had the people closest to you treat it like it did not count, you already know how this feels. Subscribe. This story has one of the most quietly satisfying endings I have told. I do not want you to miss it. My name is Nadia. I run a materials coding lab out of a converted warehouse in Pittsburgh. It is late February in this story. There is slush on the sidewalks outside Sorrentino's. Everyone arrives looking slightly windswept. The private room in the back had been reserved since November. My sister Danielle had coordinated everything. She mentioned this to every person who walked through the door. 23 people, white tablecloths, small menus printed with my mother's name at the top. Mom was turning 60. I got there exactly on time. I was wearing a navy dress I had owned for years. Mom once said it made me look like I was going to a funeral. I wore it anyway. I carry a photograph inside my laptop case. It is a picture of my old college lab bench, a coffee mug in the corner, afternoon light through a dusty window. I have no idea why I still carry it. I just do. I found my seat at the far end of the table, next to my cousin's 8-year-old, who had headphones on and was deep in a tablet. Danielle had called the seating arrangement thoughtful. I was as far from my own mother as possible while still being in the same room. I sat down. I poured myself some water. For one moment, I wondered if I should have just sent flowers and stayed home. I hated that I had thought it. Dad was showing my brother-in-law Marcus his new golf irons. Mom was standing near the door holding Danielle's car keys like they were made of something rare. "It's a Pilot," Danielle said. "Fully loaded, heated everything. Marcus and I decided we deserved it." She had already said this twice. I had counted. What nobody in that room knew was this. 11 months before that dinner, I had closed a deal with a company called Vantech Materials. The deal was for a surface bonding formulation I had spent 4 years developing in my lab. The sale price was $3.8 million. And that was not the largest deal I had made. The patent before that was a bonding layer compound, licensed to 2 manufacturers, $6.2 million, paid out over time. My full IP portfolio at that point included 3 patents actively generating royalties, 4 more in application, 2 in early development. My uncle Dennis, an IP attorney based in Seattle, had been managing the portfolio since my 2nd year of graduate school. The total across all licensing, royalties, and consulting fees was $14.7 million before taxes and legal costs. My family thought I ran a warehouse lab that was barely holding on. My mother told my cousin Simone at Christmas that I was doing product testing for a cleaning supply company. She said it like it was a relief. I had tried to tell them. When I finished my doctorate, I mailed them an invitation to the graduation ceremony. They did not come. I mailed them a copy of my dissertation. I do not know if they opened it. When my first patent was approved, I called home. Mom said, "That is interesting, honey." Then she asked Danielle whether she wanted the good china at the housewarming party. I stopped bringing it up after a while. The Vantech offer came on a Thursday. I called my parents immediately. I was standing in my lab holding the offer letter. I had wanted to share that moment with them. They took the call on speakerphone. They were watching Danielle's kids at a swim meet. Mom said, "That is wonderful, sweetheart." Then the line went dead. No questions, no callback. I stood in my lab listening to the dial tone. It felt like a door closing. About a year before the birthday dinner, Danielle sat across from me at a family lunch. She looked at me with genuine concern. She said I was 32 with nothing solid to show. She said I was wasting my potential. She said she could send my resume to her firm's HR department. She could put in a good word. I said thank you. My jaw stayed tight the entire drive home. Uncle Dennis arrived 20 minutes late. He kissed Mom on the cheek, he loosened his scarf, he scanned the room. He walked straight past the seat that had been saved for him next to Dad. He came to my end of the table and sat down beside me. "How are things since the sale?" he said. His voice was warm, unguarded, carrying. 3.8 million is not a number you hear every day. The room stopped. Not a lull, not a pause. Stopped. I need to pause here. Has anyone ever watched something they built just be ignored? Like it did not fit the picture people had of you, so they just kept the old picture. Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely asking. Uncle Dennis had no idea. He kept going, enthusiastic, specific. He talked about industrial adhesion applications. He talked about secondary licensing potential. He mentioned the European Surface Technology Conference in Zurich. He said my formulation work had been cited in 4 industry publications. He said he had assumed my parents were bursting with pride. I did not rush. I did not explain myself ahead of schedule. I answered each question when it came. When Danielle said I was just sitting back and coasting, I let Uncle Dennis answer that. He told the room I was currently leading development on a low-toxicity bonding compound for medical device manufacturing. He said if the trials held, it would replace a process that created significant chemical waste. Danielle's face went uneven. I took a sip of water. They had no idea what was coming. My firm manages Nadia's full IP portfolio, Uncle Dennis said. The Vantec sale was actually the smallest transaction. Mom's face went very still. The bonding layer patent before that, I said. Licensed for $6.2 million. Danielle's face went blotchy in the cheeks. You have made over $10 million, she said. Licensed, I said, not made. The full total is closer to $14.7 million, before taxes and legal costs. Marcus cleared his throat. So when Danielle told you to contact her firm's HR, he started. She told me I was 32 with nothing solid to show, I said. I looked at Danielle directly. She offered to send my resume. She said she could put in a good word. Danielle's voice went small. I was trying to help. You were trying to feel ahead, Simone said. We all watched it happen, every single gathering. Uncle Dennis's voice went quiet. When Nadia called to tell you about the Vantec offer, she was crying, not from celebration. She had just tried to share the news with you both. You were at a swim meet. You said, "That is wonderful, sweetheart," and you ended the call. The candles on the table did not move. Nobody touched the appetizers. I reached into my bag. I placed an envelope in front of my mother. "Happy birthday, Mom." She opened it slowly. Her hands were not steady. Inside was a check for $50,000. "What is this?" she said. It did not come out as a question. A gift. Dad has been talking about the sunroom for years. This covers it. We cannot take this, Dad said. He had not looked away from the check. You can, I said. It comes with nothing attached. You are still my parents. Mom started crying. Not the careful kind she saved for public occasions. Real crying. The kind that has weight behind it. Nadia, I am so sorry. I never asked. I never understood. I know you didn't mean to make me feel like I wasn't worth asking about, I said. But that is what happened. Simone raised her glass. To Nadia, the most accomplished person at this table and the one who was treated like she was the least. Nobody spoke against it. The waiter came back. Quietly, people ordered their mains. During the main course, my father asked what I was working on. It was the first time he had asked about my work in over 5 years. I told him about the medical device project. He asked follow-up questions, real ones. After dinner, Uncle Dennis tried to explain my work to Grandma Yvonne, who had wandered over. He got most of it wrong. I started to correct him. Then I stopped. The moment just sat there. Nobody filled it. It ended without resolving. When dessert came, Danielle made one last attempt. "Mom, this has been such a beautiful night. Are you happy with how it turned out?" Mom was quiet for a moment. "I think I have not been a fair mother to both of my daughters." Danielle went still. "To both of you," Mom said. "Nadia, I failed you by not paying attention. Danielle, I failed you by letting you believe that being more visible meant being more valuable." It was not a clean moment, but it was honest. 3 weeks after the dinner, Mom sent an email with no subject line. She had found my first licensing certificate in an old box. She framed it. She put it on the wall in the front room next to my graduation photo. She said she should have done it years ago. Dad called that Thursday about materials for the sunroom floor. It was clearly an excuse to talk. We stayed on the phone for 47 minutes. Danielle texted 2 months later. She said she was sorry she had needed to believe I was behind. She said she was trying to figure out why. I told her I was sorry I had stopped trying to include her. At Danielle's birthday dinner in the spring, Mom introduced me to the people she knew there. "This is Nadia, my daughter. She runs her own formulation lab and holds multiple patents in industrial surface chemistry." She said it with something that sounded like pride. Then she spent just as long talking about Danielle's new responsibilities. Not perfect, but real. In November, I was invited to speak at an international summit in Stockholm. The speaking honorarium was $35,000. I sent my parents the details and asked if they wanted to come. They both did. They sat in the front row. During the standing ovation, Mom covered her mouth with both hands. I could see her from the stage. At the airport heading home, Dad said he had missed so much of what I had been building. "Can I be there for the rest of it?" he asked. I thought about the check they had never cashed. They had framed it instead. They mounted it beside the licensing certificate and the graduation photo. Underneath it, they placed a small card. It read, "Given with more love than we had earned." "Yes," I said, "there is still time." At Christmas, Uncle Dennis raised a glass. "To Nadia, who spent years being underestimated by the people who should have known better, and who chose grace anyway." Mom added quietly, "And to second chances." I raised my glass. "To family, the kind that gets it wrong and then actually tries." The photograph is still in my laptop case, my old lab bench, a coffee mug in the corner, afternoon light through a dusty window. I will probably carry it forever. Being invisible for years does not mean you were not there. It means they were not looking. Tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given them one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific feeling of watching the truth finally land, subscribe, because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.